Hello and welcome to prayers huddle discussion thing. Um, we are talking about First Kings chapter 19. So once upon a time, there was a kingdom called Israel, and it broke into two groups. The top part of the 10 tribes was called Israel, and the bottom part of the bottom two tribes was called Judah. And both had good kings and bad kings, and we are talking about the top 10 tribes, which had a bad king named Ahab and his wife Jezebel. And during his time, there was a prophet named Elijah who had a weird relationship with Ahab and mostly told Ahab, hey, I'm going to do this. And Ahab was like, no, I'm going to kill you. And then Ahab tried to kill him, but also believed what Elijah said because he thought he was an actual prophet. Anyway, Elijah had caused a drought and then did this incredible miracle, defeating all these prophets of Baal, and went and then ended the drought. And Ahab went and talked to his wife, and his wife was like, okay, Elijah, I'm done with you, so I'm going to kill you, which begins her story. I don't know what definition you guys have for prayer, but like a very basic understanding of it is the communication between you and God. So that's really what I want to focus on in this story. Elijah goes and is feeling depressed and hopeless and empty and says to God, I'm done. I'm ready to end it all. If you could just do that for me, that'd be great. And God doesn't respond, not directly and not immediately either. Instead, he sends an angel and gives him food and water and tells him to take a nap. And then he wakes up and gives him more food, more water, tells him to take another nap. And then the angel directs him to go 40 days and 40 nights up to a mountain, which a lot of scholars think was probably Mount Sinai, which is where the original law came from, if you remember, with Moses and the meeting God and getting the stone tablets. Anyway, once there, Elijah gets a message from God, and God says, again, not addressing anything that Elijah has said so far, but God says, what are you doing here? Like, he didn't just send an angel to direct him there. Anyway, Elijah was like, God, I'm tired, I'm empty, I don't want to go on anymore. And God says, okay, well, stand right here in this cave. And then this wind came by, and this earthquake happened, and this fire happened. And it says God was not in those, but in the sheer quiet behind it, or as the literal translation is like thin, quiet, thin space behind it. And then God comes up to Elijah again and says, all right, what are you doing here, Elijah? And Elijah says, I'm tired, I'm done, and I don't want to do this anymore. If you could take my life. I tried to serve you, but it's not working. And God says nothing about that. But instead, rather, he says, hey, why don't you go anoint a new king of Israel, a new king of Syria, and a new successor for you. And don't worry about everyone serving Baal, because I have at least 7,000 people who have not. Go on your way. And so Elijah does go on his way. And so like this interaction is so odd, and yet for me it's super relatable. As a Christian, we go through low patches, we go through tough times, we have hardships, and the things we thought were hard before now seem easy, and it's amazing how low you can go. Elijah brought this to God. He didn't put up a front. He didn't like say, I'm feeling really sad, but I'm going to sit here and praise you anyway, even though my heart won't be in it. Or he didn't like try to put up his best parts for God to see. Instead, he had a very real relationship with God, in which he said, God, I'm really tired. so tired that I don't want to live anymore. What can we do about this? And God didn't answer him in that space, but instead had him go to a different space, which is an interesting discussion question, and you guys should talk about that. Where do we need to go to talk to God? Is God everywhere? I think he is. But why doesn't he respond everywhere? Why does he make Elijah move? Is it something about the space? Or is it something about Elijah? Or is it something about both? There's so many other questions to ask in this passage, and I hope you guys dive into them all. And what does it feel like to have your prayers ignored, or to have your prayers answered but not by anything that you're asking, or having someone else direct you to a different place just so you can hear God? Why can't God meet you where you are? Do you feel like you have that open of a relationship with God? Is he truly your friend, or are you afraid to bring stuff to him? Do you think of him as someone who will kick you out of his presence or the church if you don't talk with the proper etiquette? God's a big God. He can take what you got. Finally, just ask what it is that you need from God. In this passage, God gives a lot of what Elijah needs and is very tender with him, but not a lot of what Elijah wants. Other than that, I hope you really dive into this text and don't be afraid to ask questions about it, because it's a super confusing passage. And yeah, stay classy, 3rd Street.
Elijah was special, so much so that he was chosen by God and had direct communication with him. In the Old Testament, this was super rare. Now, thanks to Christ's sacrifice and atonement, the Holy Spirit gives us that same direct communication with God all the time. In that sense, we are no different than Elijah. Do you want to hear from God, or do you only want him to hear from you? Do you trust God with your whole heart and emotions and body and soul, or do you only show him the parts you think are best? Do you distance yourself from him even in your prayers and then wonder why you can't hear him or see him at all? Look, God yearns for a relationship with you, so much so that he allowed for his only son to be killed just to make that happen. So don't be afraid to communicate the good and the bad of yourself to him. You can't scare him away. Like Rob said, he's a big God and he can handle your baggage. You stay classy, 3rd Street. Bless up.